Freedom. They had a lot of missionary things.
Spin.
You got someone here 4 years and
For sure. It's Jenna and Avery, you guys are able to go today?
so you can still do that.
Is someone going to be there? Or I just start?
I don't think anyone's going to be there for the race.
So I'll have to start. Okay. Sure.
And then I'll have to go through. I don't know what I'm going to do because since this is the last one, I'm just basically throwing out everything except for the juice and the candy. Or at least getting rid of it. So I don't know if maybe there's more I can sell it. Hey, do you guys want pizza? Some tombstone pizza?
If anything, there should be like a party for all those who helped the stands as like
I would be happy to do that. I'll have to talk to Bill. You do realize it would just be like you, me,
anyone who's deciding to be available.
I don't know if I have that shit. Like, no, literally you, Annie, Kinsey, would be the only people who left. And Angela.
Yeah.
And then
It's a shark.
Charlotte too.
Because he's the one who called me on figuring stuff out.
Yeah.
What am I doing?
So it would like be like 6 months.
I said as much as I would have liked.
But yeah, does that make it a little easier to get rid of stuff?
Yeah. Rather than having to waste all of it, just throw it out. Some steak.
Rotting. Tasty.
Yeah, bro. So I actually was going to do that one, but I got this stuff.
Your brain though.
Trevin, would you pray for us today?
Yeah. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for this Monday. I pray that you would bless this class period we have right now, that you would help us to learn about marriage and family, and help us to grow in this, Lord, to take this information and use it in our lives the best we can, Lord, whether that's in our ministry, just giving advice to other people, Lord, or using it in our own marriage and family, Lord. I pray that you help us with that, and I pray that you help us to retain this information. I pray for the basketball games going on right now, that you would keep everybody safe, Lord, and that you would help our girls to stay healthy and to win, Lord. I pray that you will also help everybody who's dealing with any sickness right now, Lord, that you would help them to get healthier, Lord. And yeah, we thank you and we praise you in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Help the girls to win.
Of course.
Boys were left out of the equation, though.
Well, the girls are playing now. The boys get a prayer later.
The boys will get later.
Okay.
Wait, I heard the girls were playing.
The girls are playing now.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask if Iden's doing any better. Because Iden was home sick.
He's finally made it back to school.
Okay.
He went?
Like just. right, we're still on old people topic.
Yeah.
And then after old people, we're gonna talk about work. Like balancing work.
Work.
Yes. All right, Jenna, you're gonna be first, but let me talk for a bit, and then Jen will be up. I missed Jenna the other day, so I blanked it out, so she'll go first. Well, I didn't really blank it out, it just was never even on the radar. Never even knew. All right. Okay, marital satisfaction increases sharply after 50. I'm 51, so hey, I'm on the other side. This is good. Overall satisfaction increases with age, so the relationship with kids, the marriage, work, finances, and sexuality peaks at midlife, later decreasing with age. So good marriages impact health, so it shows that when people are happy, that they're doing well, that they feel a sense of security in the relationship, they generally have better health outcomes. And when you have the opposite, where people are feeling lonely, isolated, in a bad relationship, you generally get more negative things that can come up. All right, so if we were to describe a good marriage, what would we describe it as? So we're in our later years and we're giving advice to those who are younger. What would we say? This is what a good marriage should look like.
Fun.
Okay, so we would include elements of fun. So being able to have a sense of humor with one another, do fun things. So it could include activities together.
I think the biggest thing, especially nowadays, is just security, man. Just knowing, like, not worrying about them going off. Like, you always have that person, and that not having
Sense
that
of
worry is
security,
big.
yeah.
Well, I saw you and Aaron Thurber going for a run one morning.
Okay,
And I was like, that's love.
that's love.
Because you were like pushing him
Yeah, I don't
along.
always feel the love on the runs with them.
Yeah. You guys are pushing each other along though.
Yeah, keeping company with each other, yeah, it is a good thing.
Still striving physically.
Yeah. What else? The security thing I think is pretty good. I like that. When I think about, my husband asked me, well, what's one sort of word you could describe, you know, how you feel about our marriage? And I felt like personally it brings me a sense of huge peace in my life. Like, and it's connected to security, I think. I'm a high security person. Like I thrive when I have high security. So what else in a good marriage? You want to look back. What do you want it to look like? Yeah.
I think just joyful. Like you want to still like being around that person.
Still
when you're
like each
getting
other.
Older.
Yeah.
Like just enjoy being in each other's presence. You're not sick of hearing stories or
Right.
like, well, I know everything about you. Leave me alone now.
All right, good. That's good. What else? Describe as a good marriage. What about the basics of communication? Like remaining open through all the years? Like you still have a person that is your go-to?
Pretty single for a reason.
All right, family relationships in later years. So family is extended, all right, through people marrying, having grandbabies, then great-grandbabies. Do you kids? I shouldn't call you kids because I don't think you're kids. But do you guys have great-grandparents that are alive?
Not anymore.
Who has a great-grandparent? All right, some of you. I had my great-grandparents, well, my great-grandmother alive for well into, I don't know, I was close to 30 probably. It's a long time, yeah. And she was really influential in my life in that she always would, you know, she was very supportive and loving. She would send us money for diapers for the kids. She loved the kids so much. So it was really sweet. It's a myth that American families don't care for older family members. So in general, Americans are seen as being neglectful towards their elders, towards grandparents and so forth, but in general, there is care that's going on, we could say. As people become more and more socially isolated from their families, like if you get a job, move away, which happens a lot when you're going into ministry. You do end up moving away, going somewhere else, and not staying connected, then you can have trouble in this area. But in general, most families do it. And most of the time it's the girls caring for the parents. Grandparents are living longer and becoming more involved in the lives of their grandchildren. So it brings a lot of stability to kids. And they're also the most common child care provider. So if you live in a community where your grandparents are there and you're there, how many of you had grandparents that babysat you? A lot of you did. You guys are like, you like live the good life. So it really is helpful. I didn't have this benefit my mom came here, but my mom wasn't too capable by the time she got here. But I didn't have any help from extended family, and I feel like it would have made things better if I did have more help. All right, grief and loss. We touched on this a little bit the other day about how when you get to this stage, how people are experiencing at this age so many encounters with people dying. And it can sound like, I don't know, we can maybe not act in compassion towards them when we hear about all the loss, but we have to remember that there are so many losses that occur in older people's lives. They're losing family members, they're losing friends, they're losing a sense of identity through the work that they might have done, maybe a loss of contact with family members. So they're experiencing loss on so many levels. So it's also a time where you have widows and widowers dying together. I just told you guys the example of this happening in Ellendale, where the Tatums, who were old football coach at Trinity, the football field is named Tatum out there. They died within 2 to 3 weeks of one another in their 80s. So it's interesting how a lot of times this happens. But women live 5 2-point years longer than men on average. All right, so if you marry a guy that is significantly older and you're going to live 5.2 years longer, chances are you're going to spend time apart. Like my husband is 3.5 years older than I am. So if you add 5.2, in general, I'm going to be living 8 or 9 years longer than he does. So that's a long time. This is an interesting concept. Women seem to fare better emotionally after the death of a spouse, but tend to suffer financially. So I don't know if you guys have you had grandparents where the grandfather has died? All right, and then it's like, or have anyone had the grandmother die first? All right, sometimes when the grandma dies first, the grandpa, particularly in this older generation, where you had these very defined roles, where the wife did the cooking and cleaning, let's say, and the wife dies and the husband's left behind and he has no clue as to how to do anything whatsoever. All right, this is my husband's parents are like this. It's like a major crisis when she is hospitalized. Because he can't do anything without her. Like, doesn't know how to run an oven or anything. Like, zero. So, they do say that women seem to do a little bit better. Maybe that's part of it, is the role thing. The role balance could be an issue there. What do you think, Trevin?
Do you think that it could also be because women tend to have more emotionally connected friendships too, where men would be more emotionally connected to their spouse as their only source of emotional support?
Right, yeah, that's a really good insight. The emotional connection keeps their health up and makes them feel better, yeah. Dylan, did you have a thought?
Did I have a thought?
Yeah, I thought you were waving your hand.
No.
No, he was just,
He's just,
No, I'm just trying to get comfortable. I'm not gonna lie.
he's just trying to
This
stay
chair is
there.
uncomfy and I wanna go.
all
to
right,
bed.
Jeff.
Okay. I actually had both situations happen on
Where
both sides. So
grandma
my dad's
or,
side,
okay,
he lost his mother
all right,
first, and then my mom's side, she lost her father first.
okay.
And so, just from what I've seen, my grandfather, he kinda like, you know, we didn't hear from him for a little bit, and then he eventually got like a bunch of pets to keep him company.
Okay,
So I guess he kind of missed it, because they used to have 2 dogs, and after they passed away, they didn't really get pets. But after that, he got like a cat, and he had like 3 dogs, and like just wanted something to do. And then my grandma was okay, but she like ended up just like traveling a lot. Like she like had the freedom to go out and just, she bought an RV and just traveled.
oh
like,
my
everywhere.
gosh,
Yeah, she like went all
that's
out.
gonna
but-
be me.
But she like, I don't know, she was.
That's
she was
totally
going
gonna be
there.
me.
I don't know, but it was a lot different,
I could like spend my whole life camping and be thrilled with it.
you know?
Interesting thing what you said about you didn't hear from the grandfather for a while. Frequently, it's the woman that forces the social connection in the family. Like, they're the ones that say, we need to be emotionally connected, and the man generally doesn't always, it doesn't pop up as the first thing to think about. So I guess it can take time to realize, oh wait, I have a need here, it's not being met. All right, but women, even though they might do better, are suffering financially, so they don't do as well financially. So that's a huge consideration. All right, let's see. All right, what are some practical ways that individuals or the church could reach out to elderly? So how could you reach out to elderly facing loss in particular? What do you think?
Something we do at my church, my parents invite the widows to like our Christmas dinner and our Thanksgiving dinner, because like their families are, I don't know why, their families are always super far away or whatever.
Okay,
So then they get to like hang out with us a
stay
little.
connected.
Yeah.
All right, they're inviting people over.
Yeah.
What are some other things?
Church bingo night.
Oh yeah.
Church bingo night. What is it with bingo? Is bingo gonna die with the boomer generation?
No.
Dan's
Because I
gonna
don't
be
see
quiet.
many Gen Xers
We'll
in
play
it.
a world, I can feel that.
I can definitely host the bingo.
I'll put bingo.
All right, so activities that they like.
Sorry.
Maybe just acknowledging to people that they are experiencing loss, like showing empathy for it, because sometimes I'm just saying this from what I get from our family is the constant calls about who died. It's you're kind of like, oh, it's just on a list of the next person, you know, without really realizing that this really is hurting the person. We have to be empathetic towards that.
That's like one of the hardest things. Like, if you really think about it, if you go into a relationship, you have to anticipate walking through death with them. Because eventually,
Right,
one day, one of their family members are gonna die, and you gotta walk through that together. You gotta be
Yeah.
ready for that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because that's kind of what I thought in my mind, like, dang, it's gonna sting, you know?
You mean each other or the deaths of other people?
The deaths of their family members.
Yeah,
Walking through that with them. That's kind of been my thing.
yeah. Have you guys has anybody experienced grief, like the loss of somebody that was like really, really significant in your life?
Does my cat count?
No.
No.
Does 2 of my
Talking about
cats
real
count?
people. So not much.
For
All right.
me, it was more of just like my mom knew a lot of people that were dying, so
Okay.
I was the one supporting them.
Yeah. Experiencing grief, having people die that are really close to you that meant a lot.
Oh.
We don't experience it a lot when you were young, but as we age, it is the worst pain of anything. And having those experiences, it will make you more empathetic as time goes on as you experience it more.
Yeah, my mom lost both her parents and her best friend in the past 3 years.
Yep, exactly.
We had one year at Trinity where we lost 2 students in the time of like 2 weeks. And the grief on this campus, but for it being, you know, friends and so young and such a small community, it was heartbreaking for a lot of people that were friends with the 2 girls.
They separate accidents.
Separate accidents, both happened in March during like spring break. And then another one was about April 2nd or 3rd. Actually, I think it was around April 6th. Freak snowstorm. And she's driving from Lemoore on 281, only about 4 or 5 miles up on 281. And somebody in town, both cars slid, freak hit her, you know, on the snow and died immediately. And the impact that it had on this campus was like, one was a shock, but to then get another one was just like, then everybody was like terrified just to drive. There, you know, it became like, this is you question God the one time, but then it happens again. It becomes really, it was a big deal.
Yeah. How do you cope?
How do you cope with experienced grief?
Yeah, in relationships.
In a relation, like together? Well, the last big grief situation I went through was losing my mom. She was ill, so it wasn't an unexpected thing. I think in my relationship, like what my husband did with me was just talk about what the good that could come from it, all the healing that God wanted to do in my life through it. And he just pretty much let me grieve through it. And I would say that I cried a lot for at least a month. Like a lot. And then over time, it does get a bit easier. One thing about grief that I think helps you realize is how awesome the gift of salvation is. Right? It's you know, it's a theological concept, you know, we think about it, but when someone actually dies and you know that God has saved them, like the day, you know, after my mom died, I had to go pick up her cremated remains, and I had it thrown in the front seat of my car. And I was just like, the bizarreness of her body being just ashes in a box at this point was like beyond weird, like really weird. And then the reality of the gift of salvation to me became so much more. And realizing that this is just a body and how death is so real and how life is so fragile and we don't realize it. But how do you have to be patient in letting people grieve, because grief is, you think you're better and you're not. Then it comes back in waves. And so it goes like up and down. So it would be normal to, you know, realize that that would happen and just support someone through that. I don't, like my husband hasn't really ever experienced a real difficult grief situation. I don't know. He tends to be, oh, my dad's going to die. He'll be better off. He thinks that way, but there is, you know, you can think about people being better off, but there's still loss. Like you can know something spiritually is better, but when someone's not there, that hurts.
Yeah.
No matter what. All right, let's have Jenna. Clapping to get motivated.
Okay, I'm not an artist, but I drew a house. This is my house. This is my house. Okay. This house represents the foundation of marriage. What you build on your foundation matters. The decisions you make as a couple the way you allow Christ to be the center of your relationship, your goals, and dreams. Everything that you want in life must be put into your foundation. You can choose to put Christ as your foundation, or you can put other things on your foundation, like money, social media, or something else you feel like you cannot live without. This house is where you will make most of your memories as a couple, and it is also where you may have most of your arguments. You get to decide what your house gets to be. The same way when you walk into an empty house. You can decide what goes in it and what has to stay out. You get to design your house, so what will it look like? Will you allow for the things of this world to lead you astray, or will you choose to stick to the narrow path that God has laid before you? I think this picture could also be used in ministry as a reminder of the parable in the book of Matthew that Jesus taught about. The man who built his house on the rock and the man who built his house in the sand. Both were good houses, just in different places. The rain came and the wind blew, but the house that was built on the rock was standing on the house that was built in the sand was no longer there. The man who built his house in the sand was known as the foolish man, but the man who built his house on the rock was known as the wise man. This analogy is about our hearts. Are we building our lives on the things of Christ on the rock, or are we stuck in the cycle of building our lives in the sand, where when things get tough, we lose sight of what we were created for, which is to live in relationship with Jesus?
All right, so are we summarizing now? Boy, now they got us going back to midlife. All right, we're going back to the midlife. All right, so midlife is this time where you might evaluate your Christian walk. So for too many Christians measure both their family success and their spiritual success by the actions of their grown or nearly grown children. That's a good point, right? So as future parents, you can't weigh whether you've done good or bad according to whether your children have done good or bad, ultimately. So if they're doing things that are successful, that might make you feel good, but it's not a prop to make you be the good parent. Or if they're doing poorly, it isn't always a reflection on you as well in the opposite way. So the concept of paternal determinism is this. It's believed by many Christians. It's the belief that if you parent your child properly, then they'll turn out well. All right, so if you believe in parental determinism, then the problem is that obviously this doesn't always work right. All right, so if the child doesn't turn out right, they might end up blaming God. The Bible does say that a general principle given there, that if you're to train your kid up in the ways of the Lord, then he's not going to depart from it, or she. All right, so, but ultimately, what the child chooses is between God, them and God. All right, so you guys, do you have siblings that serve God and don't serve God?
Yes,
I mean, a lot of you do, so you grow up in similar. So it happens. All right, so you're in the same household. Maybe your parents, did an okay to great to good or whatever, however they did. The outcome still can be one way or another. Right. But the goal, like I said, through parenting is to teach kids to learn to easily yield to God. That's what you want to teach them. All right.
It's nature versus nurture.
Nature versus, yeah. What do you think about that?
I think obviously it's both. I think
It's
there's
both.
there's no like one or the other, as with many things in life. Like I have a very different temperament than a lot of my siblings, and so they just turned out different, even though we were parented very similar. And so.
Do you think you have similarities as a family?
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
there's just variation in personality?
Right. Like I'm mostly similar with my oldest brother, and he's a monk, and I'm going to be a pastor.
Yeah.
So like we're both very religious, obviously.
Pretty close, pastor, monk.
Yeah. And so, but like that's different than like the next brother who like rarely even goes to church anymore. So it's like.
Also, were your younger kids raised differently, though?
Right.
They probably somewhat.
Yeah, I suppose like the younger siblings, because like their older siblings started leaving the house, so they had more time and resources that could be devoted to their pursuits and stuff, so they
Right.
got.
You said they were super figure skaters? Or
Well, not super figure skaters yet, but hopefully they'll get there.
hopefully they'll get there. All right, the next concept is hedonism. So hedonism is the belief that pleasure and happiness are their primary goals in life, all right? So a lot of people take this view towards marriage, that my goal through marriage is to be happy. And we talked about when we went through that book, was that marriage isn't really primarily to make you happy, but to make you grow in holiness and to grow to be more like God. But this mentality is still a huge threat to Christians and Christian marriages. Midlife crises can cause people to give up on marriages. Christian couples might divorce at similar rates. All right, so this might be, I don't know about this statistic anymore because the statistics seem to come up and down. In general, divorce rates are going a bit down, but Christian couples divorce quite a bit. And one thing that I've noticed is the longer I've been in Trinity is the more I hear about the marriages that started when we first came here. I'm talking about students getting married, about their marriages being broken up. It seems like I'm hearing more and more and more of it than in the past, but I don't know, maybe it's because that 7 to 8 year itch already went by and now we're past. There's quite a few that you actually hear about that do break up. But I've also heard stories of marriages that have broken up and they've gotten back together, so it does go both ways. But the reasons for divorce, can still be similar to the general population. All right, yeah.
Do you think that directly ties in with the allowing the friendship zone to be longer than they anticipated? Like, because I talked to some mentors over the weekend, and they have me encouraged, like, there's a phase of friendship first.
Okay.
So, like, you're around friends and you hang out as friends. Allow that to be kind of like longer than you anticipate.
Okay.
Then you do the dating.
Okay.
You know.
Do I think that plays a role in
In a divorce.
divorces?
Yeah, because, or do you think like they skip that completely and switch straight dating and marriage and then off to the jump races and stuff?
I think that most couples who are Christians generally try to choose being friends at some level. I mean, if you think about the way the world looks at it, it's sex first, then we'll be friends later,
Right.
see if we like each other. So I kind of still think we do the friend thing,
Okay. So I
as you're
guess,
trying to explore if you like somebody.
right, okay, so let me rephrase my question. Do you think that the friendship zone is rushed?
Do I think it's rushed? It can be, but I think it's a huge generalization to say in general it is.
Okay.
What do you guys think? Is the friendship zone rushed within Christian dating?
It's a bad place.
Want a friend now?
What did he say?
I thought the friend zone was bad.
He's talking about just the concept of just spending more time being friends before choosing to have a relationship. This isn't getting friend zoned.
Okay. Thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
Yes.
I would think in general though, it's not a negative, it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's really.
So I don't see it's like part of the divorce thing. The divorce thing is probably does come from selfishness, sin, and having this view that you're here to make me happy. I think that is a core issue. Like having that mentality. Issues with money are huge in divorce. Like people that don't spend well, it leads to a huge, huge amount of divorces. All right. All right, so what do you think is the most important step a couple can take to ensure a lasting marriage? So one that lasts a long time.
Communication.
All right, most important step. So he's saying communication. Within communication, I would say learning how to fight fairly. All right? Because that's part of communication.
Yeah.
And it's a skill that leads to a lasting relationship. So if you can fight it out fairly and get through communication obstacles, and we'll talk more in the future about what are some rules for how to fight fair. All right, so that is a big thing, I think.
No shots in public and around friends.
Yeah, there's lots of rules like that.
You got no free shots.
All right, so what else? Lasting marriage. Any of you that did interviews, did you ask this question to the person you interviewed?
That's a great question. I've never been married before. So.
You know what, that's not.
You have to recognize that you still have to always work on your marriage. Taking interest in the other person, that it's not going to automatically always come to you, that you're going to get along well, you have to work on it. Yeah.
I was talking to the pastor at AFA and his wife, and they were like, something that really helped was to know the other person, like what happens when they like shut down.
Okay.
When like things get overwhelming, what do they resort to?
Okay, an automatic reaction?
Yeah, and learning like, oh, this is what you do and this is how I can help you have your space so that we can come back and talk in a healthier environment.
Okay. So that would be, like if you're not able to cope with something very well, you're putting a pause on it, saying we'll meet back at this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good. All right. Okay, Theo, do you wanna?
Yeah, I can go.
You wanna be up? All right, what did you do, Theo?
I'll go up front. Yeah. I did a marriage interview with Remington and Madison Thurber, which is my brother and sister-in-law. And the first topic that I kind of went over was about budgeting. So I asked some questions like, how do you budget? You know, like, why is it important? Like, when should I start? And so they really, you know, just to make it short, they really emphasized the importance of budgeting, excuse me. And they said that they incorporated budgeting like super early on, and that it's been really helpful because, let's see here.
They were married in 2019.
Yeah, and the main thing that I took away from it was like, for the budgeting part was, they noticed it like spending patterns at certain times of the year, and this helped them like plan ahead into the future so that they can be more prepared for those times like Christmas or something like that. Another thing I talked about was like family, all things family life, and like, you know, how to manage difficult situations like in-laws and other things like that.
What is this?
And their advice was just to like show love in the situation, which was really good, but also like not a complete answer maybe. But the third topic was ministry. So it was like, how do you balance like ministry and family life? But they were just like, you can't say yes to everything, but I think most of us really grasp that idea. But it is important to remember. And then they said that ministers often experience burnout because they don't prioritize their family. Instead, they prioritize like ministry. Maybe too much. And then the last thing I want to go over that I really found like interesting was about wedding. And both of them stressed the significance of hiring an exceptional photographer to the wedding, because the wedding photos will serve as the lasting memories of the special day. And
Justifying a big bill.
and in their view, while other aspects of the wedding should be planned according to budget,
photography is an investment worth prioritizing in their minds. And that was just some of the
Tell them
things
about that, that they use an app or something. What was the name of the app they use for the budgeting? Did you
Yes.
tell you that? Right, this is it. They have apps for this, which this is off my Gen X mentality, but whatever. What's it called?
They specifically used an app called YNAB, which stands for You Need a Budget. And it's a paid subscription, so you're paying money to an app to budget, which is an interesting idea. But you can also use like Dave Ramsey and stuff has like financial courses that they recommended in budgeting techniques. So yes.
Okay, one thing that I've noticed, you can sit down. That I've noticed in observing Remy and Madison with their budget thing is, we don't do a budget. My husband and I don't budget. I would totally recommend that you guys do it, but we're both so tight with our money that it's less of an issue. Like spending isn't too big. But when you have two people that are very tight with your money, if you have a budget, you can probably feel more freedom to spend in areas where you wouldn't, you know? So like if you struggle with spending on something like a vacation and you have it budgeted over time, if you're such a tightwad, you can have freedom to spend in that particular area. So that's one thing where I was like observing how it's freeing. What else in there? I guess that's about it. I don't know about the wedding photo thing. All right. Okay, aging. Christian perspective on aging. All right, we have to remember that the Bible sees aging as a great thing. There's all sorts of proverbs that talk about how gray hair is like, my roots are starting to come in. How gray hair is like an awesome thing. You're supposed to be happy about it. And our culture doesn't see it that way. So how does our culture view aging in general?
Boomer.
Oh, they use the term boomer even if you're not a boomer. Boomers even some of the millennials are being called boomers. All right, so there's lots of put downs, right? Now, when you say the term boomer, what are you basically saying?
Out of date.
Out of date. What else?
Bad at tech.
Bad at tech.
Annoying.
Annoying.
Definitely a boomer.
A boomer. Okay.
I was going to say that with capitalistic society, we tend to see them as more and more useless as they age up.
Right.
Because they're not working and contributing to the economy anymore. And if anything, they're leeching off the economy because now we're paying them to simply live.
Feeling less useful. All right, so knowing that the Bible sees elders in a high view, we have to then be countercultural to this, don't we?
There you go.
All right, so we can't adopt the same attitude that the world has about aging. All right, so Asian cultures, when I went to Korea, everybody's bowing before your elders, right? When you're drinking out of a cup, you don't swig it like this in front of somebody. If you're older, you got to turn your head to the side. If you're the younger person, actually.
Oh, younger person.
Yes. Right. So it's a thing of respect. There's bowing. And there's also the use of honorifics in where you're speaking to people like, I'm Mrs. Thurber, you don't call me Karen. That would be totally
Taboo.
Asian culture. Way, way taboo. All right, you would never call a pastor by their first name. They'd probably fall over and die. You know, it would be seen as hugely disrespectful. And I think there's a lot to gain from that view where you're respecting your elders. Where even it would be abnormal if someone were 5 years older than you to not use honorifics, it's seen as inappropriate. All right, so there's always a sense of respect for someone older than you. And I think that having that sense of respect is important. We need to be countercultural in the area of aging. All right, we need to value older people. And why? Like, what does the Bible say? Why do we value older people? What do they have?
Wisdom.
They've got wisdom. All right? They've been around the block way more times than you guys have. All right? You've been around the block way more times than those who are younger than you. So you have more wisdom than those that are younger than you. So the older people they have wisdom to share. If you ask it and can have the patience to listen to a very long-winded person. Which is another generalization. All right, so be countercultural in that, and don't be ageist. All right? If you sense it in your heart, you realize it's sinful to do it, to really think of people as being less valuable for what they have to contribute to the whole kingdom of God because they are older. All right, retirement can be a time to pursue more ministry. So it's like moving towards the singleness stage again, where you also have more financial freedom than you even did when you were single. So there's a lot of things you can do. All right, what could the church do in aid in developing ministry opportunities for the older generation? All right, I kind of feel like let's take New Life for an example. For New Life, we basically expect Trinity students to come take care of everything until the summertime, whenever the whole world falls apart and we're singing with one pathetic instrument. Guys, it goes really low. Let me just say, if you think it's not great musically, in the summer it can hit lows that you've never seen. But it can be, there's a problem because the older generation is not included a lot in ministry. All right, we're giving the jobs to younger people. Like if you have a worship team, sometimes worship leaders see it as a drag to have an older person there. Like they might not have the same musical style, or they might not agree with the way it's done. All sorts of things, so they might not be included. So including older people, as long as they're physically, well, even if they're not physically able, everybody has something to offer. And you have to find a way to include them and to realize that they should be involved in ministry, all the way to the end, even if you gotta send people to them. All right, so what are some things you could do?
At AFA, it's so cute because they have all the old sweet people as the greeters, so that's something, and
They got a large old population at AFA.
And then at my church, it's usually the prayer team for when we have special prayer services is usually the older people.
Okay. Yeah. So they have more interest maybe in those areas. But on a worship team, you got to ask older people. Don't forget them. What else?
Prayer.
They can always pray. Older people have tons of wisdom, right? So also having the older people mentor the younger people, the Bible tells us that we're supposed to do that. The older people are to do things to mentor younger people. So that also means that the younger generation needs to be teachable and willing to listen to the older ones in the first place.
Amen.
But you can foster opportunities where you can mentor younger people.
In my church on Wednesday night, for the Wednesday night services, are usually the older people who like classes and stuff, going through different books of the Bible and different Bible studies.
Okay. So that's usually an area where it is considered okay to be older. Okay.
Last semester I was in the class, it was Next Gen Ministry, and we talked about how the older people could become specifically mentorship to newer Christians who don't have Christian parents, kind of like Paul was to Timothy. So we talked about how we can encourage that.
I remember when we sent Remy to college, he was out at South Dakota School of Mines. He didn't have a car, and he literally had a bike going through the north side of Rapid City to go to church. If you know North Rapid is like the armpit of South Dakota. It is really bad. And there were older people that basically adopted him and taking him to church and bringing him to their house on a Sunday afternoon to watch football. They literally just took him in and did what they could to, be a family while he was in school. Which I thought, as a mom, that meant a lot to me. That God was taking care of him through having people care for him, when he was out on his own on a bike trying to survive. So that's one thing you can do, is taking in, college students. I know my daughter, Chloe, they're doing some Chinese students from Northern, where you adopt a student. They have a lot of international students at Northern State in Aberdeen. And so they're going to meet with them and talk with them, and that's another thing that you can do. Sam knows, my son-in-law knows Chinese, so they can talk to him in Chinese and make them feel more at home in the United States, so it's a good way to connect with people through mentoring some younger people. All right, so don't be ageist, and now that I'm old I can say that because I'm starting to feel ageism. Being older, feeling like younger people don't always realize how much wisdom there is just in being older, just because you've been there. And I realize that older people do have a lot of blind spots in certain areas too, and that the old people need to learn to be teachable from young people too. It needs to go both ways. All right, so the Bible tells us about how we need to reach out to widows and widowers. So it's a biblical command to care for them, or to help them fight loneliness, help them be contributing members to church society. If it's something that's hard for them, you help find a way.